satoma sadgamaya tamasoma jyotirgamaya mrityurma amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. The subject of my talk today is the Incarnate Yogi. This is an attribute to one of our Swamis who actually came to this country and preached Vedanta. He was one of the pioneers. Swami Vivekananda came first in 1893, and then he went back to India after staying here for about 5 years. Then again he came back in 1899. And at that time he brought with him one Swami, his name was Swami Turiyananda. Turiya is a technical word. Technical means, that means a Sanskrit word which means the highest state of realization. When a person realizes the highest state in yoga, when the mind becomes completely quiet, that means then actually one reaches the state of Turiya. And it is beyond the mind state, a state where the mind is really dropped and the consciousness remains into ultimate consciousness. That is the meaning of the Turiya. It is a stage of the consciousness which is reached when a person is absorbed in highest. And this state is the goal for all seekers of spirituality, all the seekers of meditation. The meditation that we do is very beginning, that means very preliminary things we do, and it has got stages, and the ultimate stage is Turiya. If somebody reaches the Turiya, actually he is a realized person. He may not come back. It may happen like that. He doesn't require to come back also. Come back means, that means he may not come back to the living state. He cannot come back to life. So he can cast his body if he wants. It is possible. But there are certain spiritual persons who keep the body, or their body is kept by God's will. In that way also it can be seen. And they remain in the body just to preach. If they are not there, we won't be able to know about those stages or about the spiritual experiences. That is why it is important that they remain in body after the experience and share their knowledge for the posterity. That means those who are following them. So in that way, spirituality remains on earth. Otherwise, if somebody realizes God or reaches the Turiya state and casts the body, nobody will be there to share any knowledge about the Turiya stage and what is the ultimate goal of yoga. So that is the significance of that name that Swami had, Swami Turiyananda. He took the vow of monasticism after the passing away of Sri Ramakrishna. Those who are acquainted with the life of Sri Ramakrishna know that a group of young people came to Sri Ramakrishna. They did not come in a group, but one after another, but by coincidence or by chance, they came to Sri Ramakrishna, then got attracted by Sri Ramakrishna, and then they decided to follow his teachings as a monk. There are two types of devotees that Sri Ramakrishna had. One group, they are monks, renunciates. That means they quit their householder's life and they did not enter into householder's life and dedicated themselves for spiritual practice and preaching of spirituality. They are monks, and he was one of them. And another group of Sri Ramakrishna's devotees were that they are devotees. Devotees in a sense that means ordinary householders. But they are attracted by Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna taught them also spirituality because everybody cannot become monk. So spirituality need to be taught to householders also. And definitely amongst the householders, there are many seekers, spiritual seekers. After finishing their householders' duty, many people feel to dedicate their life for the search of God, or attend to spirituality, or do some spiritual practices. So for them also, Sri Ramakrishna taught, and there are very eminent spiritual personalities among Sri Ramakrishna's householder devotees also. Now, Swami Turiyananda was more or less of the age of Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda was born in the year 1863 in Kolkata, and his birth date according to English calendar is 12th January. Just a few days ago, actually, it was celebrated according to English calendar. And Swami Turiyananda was born just 10 days ago. That means in 1863, 3rd January he was born. So he was elder to Swami Vivekananda by only 10 days, we can say, or 9 days, or something like that. So they were of the same age. But in India, there is a custom, convention. If somebody is just even elder by 1 day, he has to be respected. So in that way, he used to be addressed as Horida, Hori Bhai. Swami Vivekananda used to address him as Hori Bhai. Sometimes, of course, by his name also he used to address him, because his pre-monastic name was Harinath Chattopadhyay, Harinath. Hari is the name of Lord Vishnu, one form of a god that is, who is the preserver of this universe, in one form of God. So his parents gave that name, Harinath Chattopadhyay. He had other 5 sisters actually, youngest, and he was the youngest of them. And he was born in Bazar area, which is very well known because of Sri Ramakrishna's activities. If you that he used to visit Bazar area, that was the northern part of India when many of the devotees lived, or somehow or other it happened that many of them lived in that area, and Sri Ramakrishna used to meet them by coming from Dakshineshwar further north. And in that way, that area is really very well known for the Sri Ramakrishna's devotees and Sri Ramakrishna's influence. And he used to come to the house of Balaram Bose. Balaram Bose was also a great devotee, householder devotee. And Sri Ramakrishna liked him very much, and they were very religious. Religious in a sense that in their house they had a daily worship of Jagannath. Jagannath means the Puridham, the deity Jagannath is worshipped. So they had that worship in their house. And naturally, for everyday worship, they had the system. That means food and offerings and all those things are regularly offered. So in that way, the house was almost like a temple. So Sri Ramakrishna liked that place very much. And that house was very big. That means they were quite wealthy. And as we know that they're landlords. In those days, people used to have extensive land, and they used to hold them. And then those lands used to be given to the farmers, or in that way they used to. There are a group of people who were zamindars. So he belonged to that zamindar family, and because of devotion, his father was also a great devotee. And in that way, Sri Ramakrishna became Sri Ramakrishna used to say, that is my parlor in Kolkata. So he used to come there and meet devotees. And Harinath actually lived not too far from that house. That means his family lived not too far from that house. And there was another devotee, his name was Dinanath Bose. He is not that intimate devotee, but definitely a great devotee of Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna visited him, and he lived by the side of that devotee's house. And once Sri Ramakrishna visited that house, and Harinath was young at that time. He was, after his birth, his mother actually passed away in a very precarious circumstances. It so happened in those days, Calcutta was not that populated. It was not a big city, and also around there are forests, so naturally wild animals were there. So one day it so happened that his mother was cooking, and he was a child, young child. That means he was, I think, a few months old. And suddenly in that house, one jackal entered. Jackal, jackal, fox. So it entered, and that is a fairly ferocious animal. So by seeing that animal, actually, mother rushed to pull up that, because she thought that that jackal will bite that child and or carry away that child. So she rushed from that kitchen and held the baby on her with the two hands on her, above her head. And the jackal was afraid, and that jackal actually just hurt her. That means she was bitten by that jackal. And after some time, actually, because of this poisonous rabies disease, I think, that is, he has contracted that disease, and ultimately she passed away. So to protect her child, actually, she gave her life. And that was a very sad incident that that child had. So naturally, he was a very small child at that time, but his eldest sister actually took care of Harinath. So in that way, she grew up under the care of his eldest sister. And after some time, his father, that means when he was a schoolboy, he was a very good student and very calm and quiet. That means from the very childhood, actually, he had the, what is called, demeanor of a spiritual seeker, you can say. That means very disciplined, very serious about studies. And amongst the studies, he liked to recite Sanskrit stotras, religious verses. So in that way, from the very childhood, actually, he showed the liking for spiritual life. So he went to school, and in the school, he was a very good student. And in that way, he was studying. And then during the study period, when he was at school, his father also passed away. His father's name was Chandranath Chattopadhyay. He was an Orthodox Brahmin and very respected in his area. So in a very young age, actually, he lost his parents. And that might have affected him towards the monastic life. That means the parents were not there, so naturally there was a feeling of voidness, if you call it. So in that way, we see that he had a liking for monastic life from a very young age. So his father died when he was just 12 years old, and after his father's passing away, he also finished his that school. Probably it was a Bengali school, as it used to be called. And then he went to a Christian school, which is known as Scottish Church Collegiate School. It is still there, and it is a very well-known institution in Kolkata. It is run by Scottish missionaries. So he went there, and there also he was a very good student, studied, and in that way, after the studies, he used to follow his own routine of spiritual practices. Being a Brahmin, he was initiated into sacred thread ceremony, and after sacred thread ceremony, there are rituals that need to be followed by a Orthodox Brahmin. So he always followed them, and in that way, he became very religious-minded. And he used to do meditation, study scriptures, especially Bhagavad Gita, Upanishads, and he committed to memory the whole of the Bhagavad Gita, and he could recite throughout his life. Actually, he used to quote from Bhagavad Gita, and that was a very, from his early life, he learned that. Now, it so happened that by studying the scriptures, and he was Advaitist, that means he thought that the world, the body is nothing, the soul is the final thing, and one needs to know that, one needs to realize that. So he was a thorough Vedantist from the childhood. And there was an instance, it so happened that Bagbazar is by the side of the Ganges. That means Kolkata itself is by the side of the Ganges. So it was, sometimes he used to go to took a dip in the Ganges because it is a sacred river. And one day he went to take a bath in the river, and suddenly a crocodile appeared in the river. And once the people who were bathing there, they shouted and ran away and shouting that crocodile, crocodile in that way. Then by listening to them, Hari also started running. That means he got up from the water and started running. Then after I thought that, well, I study Vedanta, Advaita. Body is nothing. And not only that, the soul that I have, that crocodile also have that soul. That means Atman is one. So why I should be afraid the other Atman? So by thinking that, actually, he again went into the water. Luckily, the crocodile did not attack him, so he was saved. That means he had that type of courage and conviction that I am soul from the childhood. I am not the body. So in that way, we see that that incident is a very interesting incident that happened in his life. So Sri Ramakrishna was visiting a neighbor's house, as I told you, Dinanath Bosu, and at that time he had the opportunity of meeting him. It was around the year 1877, probably. And Harinath was very much impressed by seeing Sri Ramakrishna, and he had studied scriptures. He thought that as if Sukadeva, in the Puranas, in Bhagavatam, we see that Sukadeva is considered to be one of the purest of pure sages in ancient India. So by seeing Sri Ramakrishna, he had the impression that as if Sukadeva has taken birth as Sri Ramakrishna. In that way, he got the impression of Sri Ramakrishna. He was full of spirituality. His face was beaming with joy. And not only that, he sang beautiful songs. So in that way, that impression remained in his mind. But after meeting, he did not meet Sri Ramakrishna for quite a long time because he was busy with his own spiritual practices. Spiritual practices means studies and doing meditation and all those things just for the realization of his true self. For self-realization, he was working from the childhood. And another time, Sri Ramakrishna was visiting, but he was also came to know of Harinath when he visited that devotee's place. So he was looking for him because he was also impressed by his sincerity. So he called for him, and then he came, and then Sri Ramakrishna told him that, well, what are you? Why I don't see you? Come here and we shall talk, and in that way you'll get we shall learn many things about spirituality. So he said that, sir, ultimately I have to do spiritual practices. I am doing that, so I do not find time to see you whenever you come to this place. In that way, the conversation went on, but Sri Ramakrishna was so endearing ultimately. After that, he started coming to Sri Ramakrishna and visiting Sri Ramakrishna in Dakshineshwar Kali temple also. So he was initiated, and in that way, he became what is called an ardent devotee of Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna had a very good opinion about him in one place. At one time he has said, he comes of that transcendent region whence name and form are manufactured. For us, it is difficult to imagine such a region of spirituality, but definitely it is a very high spiritual realm from where the soul, his soul resided there, and from that he had descended on earth. That was Sri Ramakrishna pointed that out. And Hari Maharaj's opinion about the Guru was that the bliss he received in the company of his master more than compensated for all the sufferings in his life. All the sufferings means, as I told you, at the very childhood, he lost his parents. And naturally, losing the parents is a great, what is called sad life for anybody. And also he had to struggle for his life. Later on also, you see, this remark actually he gave at a later stage of his life. That means, what benefit? Somebody had asked him that, well, what is your opinion about Sri Ramakrishna, or what do you gain by coming to Sri Ramakrishna? He said that all the sufferings, he actually suffered in the later days. Before his death, he suffered immensely. Bodily suffering, I mean. So naturally, he said that all the sufferings they had was compensated by meeting Sri Ramakrishna. Now, after the passing of Sri Ramakrishna had asked Swami Vivekananda, Narendranath at that time, that after his passing away, he should gather these young disciples, seekers, and form a monastery. And then they do spiritual practice, and then share their spiritual knowledge with others. That means preach spirituality. That was the instruction that he had left to Narendranath. So after passing away Sri Ramakrishna, he had the opportunity of having the company of Sri Ramakrishna for about 5 or 6 years. And he had many opportunities to meet the other disciples of Sri Ramakrishna also, because they used to come, though they do not come in groups or together, individually. Whenever there was an opportunity, they used to meet, but still they knew each other very well during the life of during the living time. When Sri Ramakrishna was alive, during that time, they had the opportunity of knowing each other very well. Then naturally, Harinath was very much impressed by Swami Vivekananda and his talents. And he also, Narendranath actually also developed what is called liking for him, though they were of two natures. That means Harinath was very contemplative, and Narendranath was contemplative definitely, but at the same time, he was very much what is called heroic type of person. That means his personality was very impressive. So he had, it is said that Narendra developed a great liking for him and called him Brother Hari or Hari Bhai. Both lived in Kolkata and often came to see Ramakrishna together. And the relationship actually lasted till the end. Though they were their temperaments were different, but they have very much mutual respect. And after Sri Ramakrishna's passing away, we see that Narendranath started this Baranagar monastery, and they took the vow. 12 of them took the vow of monasticism, and he was named, Harinath was named Turiyananda, as Swami Narendranath took the name of Swami Vivekananda. In that way, his monastic name was given. And after the death, we see that most of the devotees went for pilgrimage. He also went into pilgrimage in the northern part of India. And in some places, Swami Turiyananda and Swami Vivekananda traveled together, especially in the Himalayas. So he had the opportunity of visiting the holy shrines of Kedarnath and Badrinath and stayed sometime in Srinagar in Garhwal district. So Kedarnath and Badrinath are very well-known shrines. One is Kedarnath is Lord Shiva, Badrinath is Lord Vishnu. In that way, many people actually go every year to visit that place, even now. And actually that is increasing also. Many people are going, too many people are going nowadays. So they are the, those shrines he visited, and also then came to Srinagar, and later Swami Vivekananda went to, they together traveled to Bombay and Mount Abu also. Mount Abu is a place in Rajasthan. It is on the border of Gujarat and Rajasthan, and it is a holy place for the Jain followers of Jain religion also. And at the foothill of the Mount Abu, there is a Divine Mother's place. So in that way, it is also a place of pilgrimage for Hindus. Then during their travel, actually, Swami Vivekananda had the opportunity, or they had the opportunity of knowing about the Chicago, the Parliament of Religion, Chicago. That means something is going to happen in Chicago in September, like that. They had heard there. And Swami Triyananda came back to Alam Bazar at that time. And then we see that, no, it is like this. That means when he was traveling, and then they separated. And Swami Vivekananda heard about that. And then we see that Swami Vivekananda traveled to other places, South India and other places. And he remained in North India mostly. We do not see Swami Turiyananda traveling to the southern part of India much. Later on, I see that he came to Puri or Madras also, but mostly he was traveling in the northern part of India. And Swami Vivekananda, after listening to that, and naturally other friends and well-wishers asked him to go to Chicago to represent Parliament of Religion. And in that way, when he went to the Parliament of, came to Parliament region and became very famous. So at that time, it is said that during the travels in Punjab, Swami Turiyananda heard about Swami Vivekananda's success in the Chicago Parliament of Religions. So during the time of Swami Vivekananda's travel to this country, he was an itinerant monk. And after hearing Swami Vivekananda's success, he returned to Alum Bazar. After Baranagar, the monastery was transferred to another place which is known as Alum Bazar. So that he came there, and after that we see that Swami Vivekananda returned, and Swami Vivekananda started the monastery, and by that time many young devotees, many young people, boys have joined to become monk, and Swami Vivekananda asked Swami Turiyananda to teach them. That means to teach scriptures and also build up their life. That means to encourage them or guide them towards monastic life. So in that way, time was passing. As we see, Swami Vivekananda was very busy traveling throughout the length and breadth of India, and he took care of these young disciples. And later on, we see that Swami Vivekananda's health broke down, and under the advice of doctors and well-wishers, and also he had a desire to come to the West again, second time. In 1899, Swami Vivekananda came to America, and at that time he requested Swami Turiyananda to come with him. His objective, Swami Vivekananda's objective was that there should be somebody during his absence to continue the work in this country. With that ideal, actually, with that desire, he brought Swami Turiyananda with him. But when Swami Vivekananda requested Swami Turiyananda, he actually did not agree. He said that I am not cut for West. That means the life, austere life or orthodox life that I live is not suitable for this country. But Swami Turiyananda told him that, well, you see that my body is failing and I do not find anybody to continue the work. Will you not keep my word, my request to preach Vedanta in this country? So out of his affection and love, he agreed to come to this country. So both of them came first to New York. And in New York, independently, Swami Vivekananda was teaching, and also Swami Turiyananda was also given responsibilities. So he started teaching scriptures in New York as well as in New Jersey. There is a place called Montclair in New Jersey. There in Devotees' house, actually, he used to give classes. So after staying there for some time, Swami Vivekananda sent him to western part of California. It is like this, that during the second time when Swami Vivekananda was here, one devotee, her name was Minnie Book, and she had a land in California, which is now known as Shanti Ashram. And that land was received by his parents or somebody. That means she inherited that as a land grant property. So naturally, some work needed to be done. So that land was given to Swami Vivekananda as a gift to start some work, Vedantic work. Swami Vivekananda was looking for some place to start Vedantic work, and that land was given. So Swami Vivekananda sent him. That means after visiting these places, Swami Vivekananda, when he came to this country for the second time, after spending some time in the East Coast, he came to California also, first in Los Angeles, then to San Francisco, and then of course returned back passing through Chicago to the East Coast. So at that time he sent to Swami Turiyananda to start a center in Shanti Ashram. So he came first in San Francisco, and before leaving California, Swami Vivekananda started two centers, one in Los Angeles, another in San Francisco, registered centers. So naturally, Swami Turiyananda continued the work in San Francisco, and after some time, he went with a group of devotees to this Shanti Ashram. That was a very momentous thing that he did, and that is a very important thing in the history of Vedanta in this country. That means this Shanti Ashram became the source of spirituality or dynamo spirituality that we see. What he did, that is, it was, even today, it is far away from the where people actually live. So about 35 miles away, even now, the nearest inhabitation is about 35 miles away. So we go sometimes, especially because of this pandemic situation, it is suspended for some time, but we devotees go there to have a retreat every year in the month of April. So now also we see that it is a completely secluded place. There is nothing all around. Some ranches were there, but they also almost abandoned now. And now it has been around what is called some reservations have been made by the Fish and Game Department of this country, just to continue the what is called the natural growth. So whatever it may be, so when he came, it was completely completely secluded place. There was nothing, even water was not there. So he came with about 12 devotees to start the center. And when he came, there was not what to say about a building, even a well was also not there. So he was very much upset by seeing that place, and naturally he was discouraged. But ultimately, these devotees, 12 devotees that were there, they actually was very strong-minded Americans. So they said that, don't worry, Swami, we shall build up the place, we shall work. So in that way, we see that they built up cottages, and wells are dug, and water is to be brought from a distance for a long time. And he stayed there and taught them in a routine way for about 3 years, continuously. So that was a momentous thing, because Americans were completely ignorant about Indian tradition and Indian scriptures, Indian way of spiritual life. So Swami Turiyananda worked hard. That means it was just like an ashrama. It was an ashrama, but this routine life of practice, spirituality, was not known at that time. So he had a daily routine from early morning, before morning meditation, then chanting, then breakfast, then work, and then again classes, then cooking, and in that way whole day, every day actually they did karma yoga, then they did what is called jnana yoga, and meditation, raja yoga, all the yogas actually they practiced along with the study of the scriptures. So that was a very important thing that he did in this country. So too many of his students, Turiyananda was a living example of Vedanta. That means they saw how a Vedantist or a sage in ancient times used to live. So he was an embodiment of those qualities. That means he taught, not only taught, he was a shining example of a Vedantic sage. Turiyananda had a very strenuous life in Shanti Ashram, and his health broke down. That is natural. Those who in Kolkata is not very healthy place. Water and all those things not those. So a person who has grown up in that area usually do not inherit a very strong body until and unless he has taken care from the very early age. So, and also he was a very austere person. So naturally austerity is also told upon his health. So in that way, when he lived in Shanti Ashram for some time, his health also broke down. Then he decided to come to India to meet Swami Vivekananda. His purpose was to send somebody else or just take advice from Swami Vivekananda and do what will be the next step. So with that purpose, actually, he returned to India in 1902. So on the way back, actually, when he was in the ship in Rangoon, the ship was anchored in Rangoon, he heard the passing away of Swami Vivekananda. So he was heartbroken. That means he was coming to see him and meet him and talk to him about the future work. So naturally, he was very much sad at the passing away of Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda passed away, as you know, on 4th July 1902. So what happened after the death of Swami Vivekananda? He completely abandoned the idea of returning to this country. So he lived in the Belur premises for some time. By that time, when Swami Vivekananda returned, he purchased this land of Belur Math on the Ganges, on the side of the Ganges for the future monastery, and that was under construction. So he lived in that property, and afterwards we see he was completely, his life was a life of austerities and spiritual practices. That means he did not take any other responsibilities afterwards. So he lived in Vrindavan, Uttarkashi. They are the celebrated places of spirituality. So he spent time and used to do his own spiritual practices. And sometimes, of course, he used to teach also, because he was a very learned person, not only learned, a person who he was practicing what has been said in the scriptures. So in that way, he was a shining example of what the scriptures had said. So he later developed, we see that diabetes, and was operated upon for a carbuncle. So this happened in the last stage of his life. It is said that this diabetes was with him for a long time, and later on we see that he developed a carbuncle on his backside, and he had such a control. That means being a yogi, as it is called, yogis had the control of the mind. So he had such a control over his mind that in those days surgery was very painful. Nowadays there are so many anesthesia and all those things. And that surgery also needed to be done under anesthesia. But he said, don't bother. I shall withdraw my mind from the body. And actually he did. That means his surgery was performed without anesthesia, and the carbuncle was cured. And in that way, we see that that was an incident that is recorded in his life, that without the use of chloroform or any anesthetic, his carbuncle was operated. And last 3 years of his life he spent in Ramakrishna Mission Shivashram in Varanasi. That is a place which was started by Swami Vivekananda for the poor people. It is a hospital dispensary, outdoor dispensary, come indoor hospital, and that was started by Swami Vivekananda and also there are some devotees who actually was very enthusiastic to give into shape Swami Vivekananda's idea of serving the poor people. So in that way, the property was purchased and a hospital, first dispensary, then hospital was constructed, and he lived there continuously for 3 years because of his ill health. And he needed medical attention. That is why he lived there. And he used to give regular classes, and devotees used to come. And not only that, he used to give spiritual counseling also. That is very important. That means many young people were inspired by his life and teachings. We shall share some of his teachings. They will find how practical he was. So Turiyananda was renowned for his fearlessness. As I told you, that means crocodile incident from the childhood gives an impression how fearless he was. Once that during the itinerant time, in the British at that time were very suspicious of this, what is called these wandering monks. They thought that they are surreptitiously, they are trying to encourage people for liberation or to withdraw, what is called to gain freedom, just to throw the British. That was there's some conspiracy. So in that way, they always suspected these monks. So it is said that once when was harassed by British police in North India, a high-ranking police officer asked him whether he was afraid of police. He responded, that means Swami Turiyananda responded, I do not even fear death. Why should I fear any human being? Later on, the police officer became an admirer and devotee. That means he never saw such a people, because in that during that time, the police were really very ruthless. That means they used to unnecessarily harass, not only harass, beat, and all those physical tortures also they used to do. So his method of teaching was through conversation with quotations from Holy Scriptures. That was the style that he had adopted, or that was in his nature when he used to teach. That means not only he was conversant with scriptures, as I told you, whole Bhagavad Gita, Upanishad, and all those things was in his memory. That means from his childhood he had committed to them into memory. So his method of teaching was through conversation with quotations from Holy Scriptures. He said that there are two ways of answering a question. One is to answer from intellect. That means logically you establish your answer or give the answer point by point or whatever it may be. The other way is to answer from within. I always try to answer from within. What does it mean by within? Within means from his realization. That means it is said that when he used to do meditation, that means most of the time we see after returning from the West, he used to, he was lived a austere life. That means the life of a contemplative life. So what he used to do, he himself had said that every day he used to select a verse from the Bhagavad Gita, and he used to meditate on that verse. And in deep meditation, he used to understand the deeper meaning of those verses. So in that way, he had the opportunity of the knowing in depth the meaning of the scriptures. So he is saying that there are two ways of answering a question. One is to answer from intellect. The other is to answer from within. I always try to answer from within. That means after realization of the in deep meditation, what he understood about the meaning of the scriptures. So on the basis of that, he used to give answer. Otherwise, scholarly people are there. We have studied, and naturally, if the question is asked, then we shall quote from the scriptures, and that will impress the person, or the answer will be given. But he said that though I quote from the scriptures, but when I give the answer, I give from my heart. That means what I have realized about that answer. Even though he was not actively involved in philanthropic activity of Ramakrishna Mission, he held it in high regard. He never involved into activities. All of the Swamis, they had to do some administration or do some work, go for relief work, distribution of food or medicine and all those things they had to do. But he never involved in that type of work. He was always contemplative. He gave importance to what is called meditation and scriptures, study of scriptures. So, but he did not have any conflict with the activities of the Ramakrishna Mission. He never said that, well, you are frittering away energy, you should do more meditation, do not do this, what is called this relief work or the work which involves in the worldly things. He used to say, if one serves the sick and distressed in the right spirit, in one single day one can get the highest realization. Right spirit means you have to understand, or you have to have the realization that whom you are serving. You are serving God. So naturally, your service will be towards God. So that is itself a spiritual practice. And if the spiritual practice is done in a proper spirit, so realization will automatically come. So in that way, he is saying if these services are done, if one serves the sick and distress in the right spirit, in the spirit of serving God, in one single day, one can get the highest realization. So work actually is really worship. He sympathized with the masses and encouraged philanthropy and work for the poor and distressed. Turiyananda cared not so much for public work and organization as upon working personally with a smaller number. That was his way of teaching. He did not give what is called public lecture attended by 500 people or 100 people or something like that. He used to have discussion group like that, which people used to sit around him, just like Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna used to talk to the devotees. He used to sit on his what is called, and devotees used to surround him, and they used to have questions. Or Sri Ramakrishna sing songs, or he himself used to bring some subject and used to talk on that. That was his way of teaching. And Swami Turiyananda was also of this nature. That means people used to come, seekers used to come to him, and they used to ask some questions, and he used to answer them or discuss those things, and used to give instructions. In that way, he used to teach. So he preferred the style of an inward, meditative, and contemplative life. He seemed to be of the opinion that with large organizations, spiritual work is apt to suffer. He thought that if somebody is too much engrossed into outside work, that organizational work as it is called, then actually spiritual life is what is called suffers. It may what is called opportunity of spiritual practices becomes less. Lectures, he used to say, are to reach the public. Lecture means public lectures. That means just like Swami Vivekananda used to give, and most of the Swamis give that, preach in that way. But the real work can be done, he said, real work can be done only through close personal contact. That means real work. That means, as it is said, that spirituality can be transmitted physically. Physically means it is palpably. So that happens only with small group of people, and it is personal touch, by personal touch, personal contact. But he said that both are necessary. That means to attract people to spiritual life, lectures are very important. And for personal spiritual growth, what is called close personal contact is also very important. Both has its own place. So he, of course, prefer this, what is called this personal contact more. So let us see a few of his teachings that let us come down to us. His advices are very practical. That means the scriptures were there. He was adept in scriptures, but at the same time, he was very practical also. The practical problems that we face in our day-to-day life, how actually they can be solved, and in what way we have to handle them, that is also very important. In one place, he has said, the world is neither good nor bad. What I call good, you perhaps call bad, and the reverse. What is the standard? The standard is our own attitude towards life. Each one has his own standard, and with increased experience and insight, the standard changes. The piety is that good. We see only the reflection of our own minds. See the Lord always in everything, and you will see no evil. So it is an attitude of the mind which makes us feel something good or something evil. And if we see everything as divine, that means divinity is in everything, then actually we will not have the opportunity of superimposing evil on anything. That is the point. So it is the attitude that actually makes us feel good or bad. And in another place he said, the suspicious mind sees evil everywhere. A trusting mind sees only good. A quarrelsome person constantly finds something to quarrel about. A peaceful person finds no one to quarrel with. I find so many people here with fixed notions. They have one set idea that colors everything. Some people always want to argue. They often have little brain, cannot see a point, still they must argue. Then there are oversensitive persons. They are always on the defensive. All these are causes of evil. But the evil is not in the world. It is in the persons. It is all a matter of misunderstanding. If we understand each other better, there would be less evil. So this is a very practical thing. That means these things we face in our day-to-day life always. So if we go in depth, this advice or this way of looking at the things actually is cure for this type of problems. That means we see evil sometimes, but why we see that evil? Because our preconditioned mind. And then he has said, meditate, meditate, be absorbed in his consciousness, his H in capital. If you can think single-mindedly of the master for 5 years, master means Sri Ramakrishna, you will achieve everything. So it is a sort of guarantee. That means 5 years. If you can really meditate on Sri Ramakrishna, you will achieve everything. Then it does not matter where you live. East and west will be the same to you. Know that God alone is real. Nothing else matters. So meditation is the way by which actually we can conquer what is called our mind. That means single-minded meditation actually gives everything, gives the achievement. That achievement comes by deep meditation. So it doesn't matter where you live. Probably somebody was going away from the mount or somewhere to distant place. So he gave this advice to him. That means wherever you live, if you do meditation on Sri Ramakrishna, Guru, so naturally there will be no problem at all. Nothing else matters. Then one must have the inner conviction that whatever happens in this world happens by his will, God's will. Success and failure come by his will, God's will. The achievement of so many clever people in this world have come to naught. Everything is his will. Success, you know, there are achievements, so many people have achieved, they are just praised and all those things. And afterwards, sometimes, after years, actually, we see they go into oblivion, to nothingness. That means we have to keep their memories alive. Repression is bad. Let the mind wander wherever it pleases. Let it experience. At long last, it will tire and return to God. So in this way, actually, mind needs to be controlled. We think that, well, by suppression, we shall control our mind, but that does not work. Suppression, actually, he is saying here, if you repress it, its cravings will grow strong. But keep watch over your mind and intellect. Try to unite them with the Lord. So mind goes by association. So naturally, if we associate our mind with some divinity, aspect of divinity, thinking of God, thinking of spiritual things, spiritual personality, spiritual work, then actually minds become pure. That which is good and pure in you is good, is God. That aspect. That means everybody is a mixture of good and bad. You know, nobody is perfect. So he's saying that which is good and pure in you is God. That means purity, compassion, such are the good qualities that we have. We call sattvic qualities. That is the representation of God within ourselves. That which is evil in you is your ego. That is the ahankar, as it is called. That means that is our what is called individuality. The more you think of him, the more he will increase, and you will decrease. You means your ego will decrease. So that is a very nice advice. That means if you think of God, automatically your ego will be start diminishing. And it is very important that egoistic persons, as you know, even if when in the moments of egoism we suffer, that means ultimately we feel that we should not have talked in that way, we should not behave in that way, we should not be angry, and all those things. They are the manifestations of ego. Then ordinarily we know only the surface waves of our mind, but through yoga practice we learn to go deeper. So that is the benefit of practice of yoga, meditation. That means ordinarily we know the surface wave, that means what is in our mind, happiness, sorrow, and all those things we know. But what is at the bottom? That is why it is coming, where it is coming, how to get rid of that. All those knowledge comes by meditation. Let me repeat. Ordinarily, we know only the surface waves of our mind, happiness, sorrow, and all those things. But through yoga practice, we learn to go deeper. Then another one is that by watching and studying our own minds, we dive below the surface of consciousness. And up there waiting for an opportunity to express themselves. These we can discover before they arise to the surfaces. The seed is easily getting destroyed, but when it has germinated and grown into a big, strong tree, it requires great strength and effort to hew it down. So we must crush our desires in their early undeveloped stages. That is the benefit of practice of yoga, meditation. That means we can discover any, what is called, the things which are really affecting us. That means affecting us negatively at when they are just born, that means when in an initial stage. And if we can really get rid of them at that initial stage, then actually it will not really grow it as a tree, as it is called, when it will not affect our mind tremendously and make us suffer. So let me repeat. The seed is easily getting destroyed, but when it has germinated and grown into a big, strong tree, it requires great strength and effort to cut it down. So we must crush our desires in their early undeveloped stages. Yogis can do this. They keep down undesirable thoughts in the germ state by smothering them beneath thoughts of an opposite nature. Thus, they conquer all evil tendencies, hatred with love, anger with kindness, and so on. This is in Patanjali Yoga also it is said that, well, to conquer a desire, you have to develop a desire, opposite desire. In that way, actually, at a nascent stage, you can get rid of them. So these are the very useful and practical teaching that he had shared with his disciples, and they have noted down. There are books. There is one book, Swami Turiyananda Patra. That means he had written letters to devotees and monastics also about spiritual topics. So they are very enlightening, and they are very good for spiritual life. From today, we have again started our services online. Online means on Zoom as well as on YouTube. For some time, we had in person, but we postponed that because of the surge of this coronavirus, Omicron, as it is called. It is very infectious. That means it infects very quickly. So until further notice, we shall continue our services online. In-person services are postponed. So Raja Yoga class on Wednesday will be on Zoom. on Wednesday. And Narada Bhakti Sutra, Isodhananda also give the Narada Bhakti Sutra class on Fridays at 6 p.m. with meditation from 7 to 7:30. Then Saturday, I shall continue the discourses on Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. The next Saturday, next Sunday, the topic of talk will be life and teachings of Swami Vivekananda. Ishodhananda has scheduled his one talk, but he said that he doesn't like to give. He will resume when in-person services start. So I thought Swami Vivekananda's birthday is coming. We shall celebrate it on 25th, January 25th at 7:30 p.m. We shall celebrate Swami Vivekananda's birthday. That is according to Indian calendar we celebrate. So I thought it will be appropriate to discuss Swami Vivekananda's life and teachings the previous Sunday, that is January 23rd. And we shall celebrate Swami Vivekananda's birthday. It will not be in person, so you'll be able to see on YouTube all these lectures and celebrations. Om Madhuvatarithayate Madhuksharanti Sindhavaha Madhi Irno Santoshadhihi Madhunakta Mutosasi Madhumat Parthivagang Rajaha Madhudaurastana Pita Madhumarna Vanaspatihi Madhumagang Vastu Surjaha Madhirgavo Bhavantunaha Om Madhu Madhu Madhu. Sweet brother winds and the oceans give forth blessedness. May the earths and plants bring us health and happiness. Sweet unto us with the nights and dawns. May every particle of Mother Earth be charged with blessings. May the heavens shower us with benediction. Sweet unto us with the noble forest trees. Sweet unto us with the shining sun. Sweet unto us with the all living creation. Om, sweetness, harmony, peace. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Nice day. It is bright sun outside. In the morning, it was a little bit foggy, but now it is fine. Okay, have a good day. Thank you.
We'll see you next week.
See you next week, yes.